Ethan Vanderbilt paused mid-fold, the last white towel still hanging from his hands as he looked up. She stood at the center of the small treatment room, bathed in soft amber light. $1 million. One night. No intimacy, no touching. "Just stay so I can sleep," she said. Her voice steady but trembling at the edges. Her silk charcoal dress was immaculate, her posture perfect. Her eyes ice and fire. Didn't blink. Silence wrapped around them like a physical presence. Ethan replied slowly, each word slicing clean through the tension. "I'm sorry, I don't sell my presence. Not for any price." The woman didn't flinch. No anger, no embarrassment. Just a pause, like someone hearing a foreign language for the first time. He didn't know who she was. Didn't recognize Charlotte Whitney, CEO of Whitney Global Enterprises, a woman who closed billion-dollar deals without breaking stride, who once made a sitting senator resign with a 2-sentence email. She tilted her head, her voice casual as a cocktail stir. "Do you know who I am?" Ethan shrugged. "I assume a client." "You're not curious?" "Curiosity doesn't pay rent." She let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, not of humor but disbelief. "Ubi and Moldo is a lot of money for someone like you." Ethan nodded. "It is." He looked at her without resentment, without apology. "But I need my daughter to learn what kind of man her father is more than I need another zero in my bank account." The room thickened with a silence that wasn't empty but full. Full of things unsaid, full of weight. She scanned the room, plain beige walls, an old wooden cabinet, eucalyptus steam rising from a modest diffuser. Everything here was real, no luxury, no polish, no performance. "You think I made that offer because I'm desperate for a man?" she asked, a razor-thin smile playing at her lips. "No," Ethan replied, still folding the towel. "I think you're desperate for rest, and for someone you don't have to pretend in front of." For a moment, she said nothing. Then finally, "You're interesting." He walked over and opened the door, voice soft but firm. "I'm not taking your money, but if you really need a quiet night, the lounge out front's open till 11. Sofa's free." She stayed still, like a queen trying to decide whether to descend the throne. "No car?" he asked as she glanced down at her phone. "I'll stay," she nodded. He closed the door behind her like nothing had happened. 15 minutes later, Ethan emerged from the back office. She was still there, sitting with perfect posture, hands folded, eyes fixed on the empty parking lot beyond the glass window. No phone, no laptop, no makeup touch-ups, just stillness. As he passed, her voice stopped him. "What kind of woman do you think I am?" He turned toward her. "I don't think anything." He paused, then added, "It only takes 5 seconds to label someone, but it takes a lifetime to realize you were wrong." She let out a brittle chuckle. "I've spent 12 years convincing the world I'm not fragile, and I still can't sleep through a single night." Ethan didn't ask why, didn't press. "Then I understand why you'd offer $1 million for peace," he said simply. "You mocking me?" "No," he said. "I mean that." He paused at the reception counter, hands resting calmly. "Just some of the things we need most can't be bought." She turned her face toward him, eyes searching, and for the first time in years, Charlotte Whitney felt something inside her drop, not from fear or shame, but from recognition. This man wasn't afraid of her. Near midnight, Ethan came out for one last round of closing duties. She was still there, curled into the corner of the sofa, fast asleep. Her head tilted slightly, one arm wrapped loosely across her waist, the light from the street lamp painting soft shadows across her face. She looked less like a tycoon and more like a child, lost in a world far too loud. He fetched a thin blanket from the supply closet and gently draped it over her shoulders. As he pulled away, her eyes opened. "Do you think I'm a terrible person?" Her voice was so soft it barely reached him. He sat down across from her, not too close. "I think you're searching for something you lost, and sometimes when people don't know how to ask for help, they offer what they have. Money." She studied him for a long time. "If I had no money, would you have stayed?" "If you had no money," Ethan said, "maybe we would have talked as two people, not as a buyer and a price tag." Charlotte turned away, but something broke loose in her expression. Something tender, something unguarded. A smile barely there, but real. That night she slept soundly, not because of the sofa, not because of the spa's silence, but because for the first time in over a decade, someone had stayed and asked for nothing in return. The news hit Charlotte Whitney the way silence hits a crowded ballroom, sudden, jarring, and unforgettable. He said no. No one had said no to her in years, not bankers, not senators, not her own fiancé, until he betrayed her with a smile and an ironclad prenup she didn't see coming. But this man, a massage therapist in a faded gray polo, folding towels like life never owed him anything, he said no, just like that, without blinking, without flinching, and then he offered her a blanket. She hadn't stopped thinking about it since. The morning after that strange, quiet night at the spa, Charlotte sat in her penthouse suite, untouched croissant on her plate, coffee growing cold. A panoramic view of the city spread out in front of her, but all she saw was the look in Ethan's eyes. He wasn't impressed. He wasn't intimidated. He wasn't interested. What kind of man walks away from $1 million like it's a casual Tuesday? Ms. Whitney, Julia, her assistant, poked her head into the dining area. Your 10 o'clock with the Shanghai delegation is waiting in conference too, Charlotte blinked. Tell Harrison to start without me. I'll join later. But they requested. I said later, Julia. As the door clicked shut, Charlotte opened her phone, typed in River Wellness Spa. Her finger hovered over the number, then stopped. No, that would be obvious. She needed a reason, a real one. 10 minutes later, she was in the back seat of her black Escalade, sunglasses on, voice clipped. Take me to River Wellness. No media, no security. I don't want anyone to know. The driver hesitated. Ma'am, are you sure that part of town isn't? I'm not asking for your opinion. Yes, ma'am. Ethan was folding fresh sheets when he heard the door chime. He didn't look up right away. He didn't need to. There was something about her presence. It was the kind that didn't ask permission to take up space. It simply was. Good afternoon, he said, calm and neutral, still not looking. Same service as last time. No, her voice was low, deliberate. Today I just want to talk. Now he looked up. She wore a soft cream blouse tucked into dark jeans, her hair down, this time less CEO, more human. But the steel in her eyes remained. I don't talk during sessions, he replied. I don't want a session. There was a pause, thick and still. Then Ethan motioned toward the small chairs near the window. He sat across from her, arms relaxed, eyes quiet. Charlotte folded her hands in her lap, like she was on trial. I don't do this, she began. Offer strangers money, talk to people I don't understand. She met his gaze. You didn't take the money. No. Why? I told you. No, you gave me a principle. I'm asking for the reason. Ethan leaned back slightly, studying her. Because I know what it feels like to be bought. And I made a vow after everything that I wouldn't let my daughter watch me become that version of myself again. Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. Then she said softly, My father used to say money isn't love, but it'll make people act like it is. That's not love, Ethan said. That's performance. She almost smiled. Almost. Maybe I've been performing so long I forgot who I was off stage. Ethan looked at her, not just at her face, but through her. There's still someone real in there, he said. She's just scared of being seen without the armor. Charlotte exhaled the kind of breath that's been waiting to escape for years. Do you think people like me deserve peace? Ethan didn't hesitate. I think everyone does. The question is, what are you willing to give up to find it? She nodded slowly, processing. You think I'm broken? No, he said. I think you've been cracked open, and maybe that's the beginning of something better. The room went quiet again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was still, present. Then Charlotte stood. Do you believe in second chances, Ethan? I believe in people who earn them. She held his gaze. Dinner, just dinner. No offers, no expectations, just real. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He looked down at the folded sheets in his hands, then back at her. I'm not your project, I know. And I'm not an escape from your world. You're not. Then why? Because, she said, voice steady but soft, you're the first person who's made me feel like I don't have to buy my worth. Ethan blinked once, then twice. He set the sheets down. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock, somewhere with decent pie, Charlotte smiled. A real one this time. You like pie? I like things that remind me of who I used to be before the noise. She turned to leave but paused at the door. Ethan. He looked up. Thank you for saying no. He tilted his head. Most people aren't grateful when I do. I'm not most people, he smirked. I'm starting to see that. The bell above the spa door chimed, delicate as wind chimes on a quiet porch. Ethan looked up from the front desk, expecting another early client. It wasn't. It was her again. Charlotte Whitney stood in the doorway like she owned the light around her. Hair in a loose twist, dark jeans, white button-down, sunglasses pushed up onto her head. This time, she wasn't alone. A small girl, maybe 6, peeked out from behind her, holding a plush toy in one arm and Charlotte's hand in the other. One hand touched her hand, and the other hand pointing in the direction of her legs. Ethan's brows lifted. His voice was calm but curious. You brought backup? Charlotte glanced down at the girl and gave a small smile. This is Sophia. She's not mine, she added quickly. My friend Vanessa had an emergency. I offered to watch her for the afternoon. Ethan chuckled softly. Vanessa trusts you with her kid? She trusts that I don't talk much and always have snacks. Sophia stepped forward, eyes wide and searching. She wore pink sneakers and a t-shirt with a hand-drawn rocket on it. She studied Ethan like he was both new and familiar. You're the man who didn't take the money, she said plainly. Ethan blinked. Excuse me? Charlotte froze. Sophia? It's okay. The girl shrugged. I heard Aunt Vanessa talking. She said you were brave, that most grown-ups forget how to be. Ethan looked at Charlotte. She looked away. Sophia continued, undeterred. Are you really a superhero? Ethan knelt to her level. No cape, no powers, just good hands, I guess. She grinned and held up her plush toy. This is Astronaut Bear. He likes people who tell the truth. Then I'm honored, Ethan replied, gently shaking the bear's fuzzy paw. Charlotte watched the exchange silently. There was something in the way Ethan spoke to Sophia, not the patronizing tone adults often used, but real conversation, real warmth, no rush, no hidden agenda. It made her chest ache. I'll just wait in the corner, she said, taking a seat near the window. I don't want to interrupt. You're not, Ethan replied. In fact, you might like this. 10 minutes later, Sophia was sprawled on a yoga mat in the back room while Ethan demonstrated basic stretches. Charlotte sipped from a paper cup, watching them from a distance. She should have been checking emails, responding to board messages, scanning stock updates. But she didn't. Instead, she watched a man who had once turned down her fortune make a 6-year-old laugh with nothing more than a stretch and a silly sound effect. Hey, Ethan, Sophia asked mid-giggle. Why don't you work at a big company if you're so smart? Charlotte straightened slightly in her seat. Ethan paused, then smiled. Because I like seeing the sky when I leave work, and because sometimes peace is worth more than prestige. Sophia tilted her head. What's prestige? Fancy way of saying other people think you're important. But you are important. Astronaut Bear says so. Ethan laughed softly. He sounds wise. Charlotte's voice surprised even herself. He is. Ethan turned, eyes meeting hers. It was the first real quiet moment between them since their conversation 2 days ago. The first where it didn't feel like a test. You're good with her, Charlotte said. Kids don't play games. They ask what they mean, say what they feel. There's honesty in that. You think grown-ups lose that? I think most traded it for titles and caution, for armor. She nodded slowly, glancing at Sophia. I used to know that kind of honesty before things got expensive. Ethan looked at her. Then maybe it's time to renegotiate. Charlotte let out a breath. You talk like someone who used to live a very different life. I did. He didn't elaborate. She didn't push. Later, while Sophia colored quietly on the floor, Charlotte approached the reception desk. Why do you do this, Ethan? Why this life? He thought for a moment. Because it doesn't lie to me. She raised an eyebrow. When I put pressure on someone's back, I feel their truth. I feel the weight they carry, where it lives. And sometimes I can help lift it. That's honest work. I didn't always do honest work. She leaned in, voice quieter. Tell me something honestly. If I hadn't been who I am, would you have treated me differently? Ethan met her gaze. No, but you would have treated yourself differently. That stopped her, meaning, sometimes the richest people are the loneliest because they start to believe the money is them, and when someone looks past the wealth, it scares them. Charlotte's throat tightened. And you looked past it. He smiled gently. I saw a woman who couldn't sleep. That's a kind of pain I understand. Just then, Sophia ran over, arms full of crayon drawings. I made this for you, she said, handing Ethan a page filled with crooked hearts and stick figures. Ethan knelt, taking it like a prized gift. Thank you, Sophia. I'll hang it on the wall. Sophia turned to Charlotte. He's not a superhero, but he's what superheroes wish they could be. Charlotte blinked, caught off guard. Why do you say that? Because he helps people feel better without punching anything. Ethan laughed, and Charlotte found herself laughing too. Not because it was funny, but because it was pure, unfiltered, unbought. That night, Charlotte stood at her window, the skyline twinkling behind her, the silence not as heavy as usual. She thought about the man with the quiet hands, and the little girl who said things adults forgot how to mean. She thought about the feeling that had bloomed in her chest, foreign but warm, and for the first time in a very, very long time, she didn't feel tired. She felt awake. Ethan arrived at the small diner 15 minutes early. It was the kind of place where the walls smelled faintly of maple syrup and coffee, where the waitress knew your order before you sat down, and the booth still had tiny rips patched with duct tape. He liked that, things that weren't pretending to be more than they were. He chose the booth by the window, the one with a view of the streetlights flickering on against a darkening sky. He sat with a quiet patience, sipping black coffee, listening to the hum of clinking cutlery and low conversation. And then, at exactly 6, the door opened. Charlotte walked in like she'd never owned a skyscraper, like she wasn't the woman who had once bought out a competitor just to fire their board. Tonight she was wearing jeans, a soft green sweater, and flats. No makeup, no jewelry, no mask, just her. Ethan stood. You found it, she smiled. You said it had good pie. I keep my promises. They sat. A beat of silence passed. Not awkward, just new. Like a blank page waiting for the first line. I haven't been in a place like this in years, she said, glancing at the laminated menu. No prefix, no wine pairings, just choices. That's the point. She looked up. Of what? Of life. You don't get peace by controlling everything. You get it by choosing what really matters. She nodded slowly, eyes scanning the dessert section. Do you recommend the cherry or the peach? Depends. You want sweet or true? She raised an eyebrow. Cherry's sweeter? No, peach is honest. It's messy, slightly tart, but worth it. Like most things that last. Charlotte laughed, not the polite kind, real laughter, soft and surprised. I don't think I've ever been given life advice through pie before. Ethan shrugged. Pie never lies. They ordered meatloaf for him, grilled cheese for her, 2 slices of peach pie to share. So, Charlotte said once the waitress had refilled their water glasses and left them alone, what made you leave the corporate world? Ethan took a moment. He ran his thumb along the edge of his mug. I was making 6 figures, had a corner office. People returned my calls in under 5 minutes, and I couldn't look my daughter in the eye without feeling like I was disappearing. Charlotte's smile faded. She was 3 when her mother left. Said I wasn't ambitious enough, that she wanted more. More what? Shiny things. A name that meant something in rooms that didn't matter. Charlotte was quiet, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. So I left the job, sold the car, moved to a smaller place, opened the spa. It doesn't impress anyone at parties, but my daughter sleeps in a bed I built with my own hands. That means more to me than any bonus ever did. That's not a small thing, Charlotte said softly. That's everything. Ethan met her eyes. What about you? What broke you open? She took a breath, long and careful. My father. He was brilliant, cold. He taught me that vulnerability was a weakness, that love was a distraction. When I turned 22, he handed me the keys to the company and said, "If you fail, you'll do it alone. If you win, don't expect applause." Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not parenting. That's grooming. She smiled bitterly. It worked. I became the ice queen he trained me to be. But when he died, I realized I didn't know how to mourn a man I had spent my whole life trying to impress. There was silence again, but this time it was sacred. Charlotte continued, more quietly now. I spent the last decade proving to the world that I didn't need anyone, that I could win alone. And now, I don't even know what I'd do if I stopped running. You'd rest, Ethan said gently. And then maybe you'd begin. She looked down. Her hands were trembling. He reached across the table, not to hold them but to be there, present. No one ever told me I was enough, she whispered. Then let me be the first, he replied. You don't have to earn your right to breathe. You already do. The pie arrived, sweet, tart, perfect. They shared it in silence, but not loneliness. After the plates were cleared, Charlotte leaned back, eyes soft. Why did you say yes to dinner? Ethan considered. Because you showed up that night asking for peace, not power, and I thought, maybe that version of you deserves a chance. Charlotte bit her lip. What if I mess it up? Then you try again. That's what real people do, she smiled. And the peach? He grinned. Still honest, still messy, still worth it. They walked out together, the bell over the door jingling behind them. The night air was crisp and Charlotte paused on the sidewalk, looking up at the stars just beginning to appear. I forgot the sky could be this quiet, she murmured. Ethan looked at her. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the woman with a guarded voice and a ledger full of wins, but the person underneath it all. It's been here the whole time, he said. You just had to stop running long enough to notice. And as they stood there side by side, beneath a sky that asked for nothing, Charlotte Whitney realized something she hadn't felt in years. She didn't want the night to end. The rain came soft and steady, painting the windows of Ethan's tiny home with streaks of silver light. Inside, the air was warm, scented with cinnamon and old wood, the kind of smell that reminded Charlotte of things she hadn't let herself miss. Slow mornings, childhood books, her mother's rare laughter before silence became their family's native tongue. She stood near the bookshelf, fingertips grazing the worn spines of novels and children's stories. You read all of these? She asked. Ethan poured 2 mugs of tea in the small kitchen. Not all. Some are for me, some are for Harper, some for the days that feel too quiet. Charlotte turned to him. I didn't picture you as a tea guy. I'm not, but sometimes whiskey doesn't heal the way people think it does. He handed her a mug. She accepted it like a truce. You really built this place? She asked, looking around the living room, humble, clean, lived in. A crocheted throw draped over the couch, a crayon drawing framed above the mantel, the fire crackling low. Ethan nodded. Took 3 years, some days with a hammer, some days with prayers. You pray? Not always with words. She sat on the edge of the sofa, tea warming her palms. It's quiet here. That's the point. Charlotte sipped, then asked, Do you ever miss it? The money? He considered. I miss not having to think about groceries. I miss knowing I could fix anything with a wire transfer. But I don't miss what it cost me. Charlotte tilted her head. What did it cost? Ethan looked at her. Really looked. My reflection. She stilled. That's the line, isn't it? She said softly. The one no one warns you about. The moment when you stopped recognizing the person's success made you become. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. A soft knock echoed from down the hall. In a small voice. Dad? Ethan smiled. Come on out, baby. The door creaked open and Harper emerged in her pajamas, barefoot, curls tousled, rubbing one eye. I had a weird dream, she mumbled, clutching her bunny. Charlotte's expression softened instantly. What kind of dream? Harper blinked at her. You were there. Charlotte blinked. Me? Harper nodded solemnly. We were on a boat. You had a sword. You saved Dad from a big sea monster. Ethan chuckled. I always knew you had a hero in you. Charlotte smiled at Harper. That's a very brave dream. Harper padded over and climbed into her father's lap without hesitation. Ethan held her instinctively, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Are you staying here now? Harper asked Charlotte, her tone sleepy and innocent. The room held its breath. I'm just visiting, Charlotte said gently. But maybe I'll visit again, if that's okay with you. Harper nodded. Okay, but next time bring your sword. I'll remember that. Ethan kissed the top of his daughter's head. Want me to walk you back to bed? Harper shook her head, yawning. Just stay here for a minute. So he did. Charlotte watched them in silence, something shifting inside her, something she didn't have a name for, something neither power nor prestige had ever managed to give her. Peace. Not the kind bought in resorts or spas, but the kind built slowly through trust, through small hands holding yours, through moments that ask for nothing but presence. Later, after Harper had fallen asleep again, Ethan returned to the living room. Charlotte was staring into the fire, lost in thought. He sat beside her, close but not too close. She's amazing, Charlotte said. She's the reason I wake up, even when I don't want to. Charlotte turned to him, eyes glinting in the firelight. Do you think people like me can still be good parents? Ethan didn't flinch. I think being a good parent doesn't mean never failing. It means showing up again after you do. She swallowed hard. I had a miscarriage years ago. I never told anyone, not even the father. Ethan didn't speak. He let the silence do what silence does best, hold space for what words can't carry. I buried the idea of motherhood so deep I forgot where I put it. But then I saw you with her, and I wondered what kind of person I might have become if I'd known love like that. Ethan spoke quietly. You still can. She looked at him, almost afraid to believe it. You're saying I could start again. I'm saying the best stories don't begin until the second act. Charlotte blinked, and then a single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Ethan reached over, not to fix it, not to save her, but simply to offer his hand, and she took it, not out of romance, but out of reverence. Because in that moment, Charlotte Whitney realized something profound. Not all miracles are loud. Some are quiet. Some arrive as little girls with dreams about sea monsters. Some take the shape of men who fold towels and heal people with silence. And some begin on nights when it rains, in homes built by hand, with fires that burn slow but sure. Outside, the storm kept falling, but inside, something else had begun to rise. When Charlotte returned to her penthouse, something felt wrong. Not in the usual boardroom crisis or press leak kind of way. No, this was quieter, more internal, like a pair of shoes she'd worn for years suddenly didn't fit anymore. This is pretty rough. She kicked off her heels and stood barefoot in the middle of her vast living room, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing the entire city beneath her. Skyscrapers blinked like stars, trying to be important, and for the first time she looked at all of it and thought, none of this feels like home. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. He heard you've been slumming it in massage parlors, Charlotte. You always did have interesting taste. LJ, you are my brother after all, eh? He gestured. She stared at the message. No signature needed. Grayson, her ex-fiancé, the same man who had toasted her at charity galas and sold her out to investors behind closed doors. The man who had once whispered promises into her neck while hiding prenups in his desk drawer. The man who knew how to make one sentence feel like a trap. She ignored it. 3 days passed. Ethan didn't call. Neither did she. But the quiet between them didn't feel empty. It felt waiting. Then on the 4th day, Charlotte stood outside the spa again. She didn't plan it. Her driver had taken a wrong turn, and suddenly there it was. The little blue door, the faded sign, the scent of eucalyptus wafting out like an old friend. She stepped inside. The woman at the front desk smiled politely. Can I help you? Tell Ethan I'm here. The woman blinked. He's with a client at the moment. I'll wait. 20 minutes later, Ethan appeared, towel around his shoulders, hands slightly damp. He froze when he saw her. "You came back," he said, voice unreadable. "I didn't realize you had security clearance on who's allowed through the door," she said, a little sharper than intended. Ethan studied her. "What's wrong?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then said simply, "I think I forgot who I am." He motioned toward the small consultation room. "Come sit." They walked in. No candles, no spa music, just 2 chairs, a desk, and the weight of unsaid things. She said, "I got a text from Grayson." Ethan didn't react. "He knows about you, or at least that I've been coming here." Still silence. "He's planning something. I can feel it." "And what do you want me to do about it?" Ethan asked, gently but directly. Charlotte blinked. "I don't know. God, I don't even know why I came here." "Yes, you do," she stared at him. "You came here because for once someone saw you without the headlines, without the armor, and you didn't want to lose that." Her voice dropped. "But I don't know how to keep it." Ethan leaned forward. "Start by telling the truth." She hesitated. Then she exhaled, slow, fragile. "I built this life from ashes. I watched men who called themselves mentors try to sabotage me. I dated men who loved my name more than my soul. I walked into rooms where no one expected me to speak. So, I learned to speak louder than anyone else. I became unbreakable." She paused, looked up at him. "And then you looked at me like I didn't have to be." Ethan didn't blink. "You don't. But what if I forget again?" she whispered. "What if one day I wake up and the version of me you're starting to care about is gone?" "Then I'll remind you," he said, "as many times as it takes." The words settled between them like a promise wrapped in stillness. Then suddenly her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time with a photo. Charlotte's breath caught. It was her standing outside Ethan's spa, and the caption, "What would your board say if they knew the queen of acquisitions is being massaged by the help?" Her stomach twisted. Ethan saw her face pale. "What is it?" she showed him. He read it once, then again. Finally, he said, "Do you want to leave before this gets ugly?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stood, paced the small room like a lioness in silk, then turned sharply. "No," she said. "No, I'm not running." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That's not the Charlotte I met." "No, it's not. It's the one I used to be. But this time, I'm staying, and not for some media stunt. Not to protect my image. I'm staying because I'm tired of living a life I have to keep explaining." Ethan smiled, slow and quiet. "Now that sounds like the real you." She nodded once, then asked, "So, what do we do?" Ethan shrugged. "I make dinner, you help." She blinked. "That's it? That's everything?" That night in Ethan's kitchen, Charlotte chopped onions while he seasoned chicken and boiled pasta. There was no music playing, just the soft rhythm of domestic peace. "I haven't cooked with someone since college," she said, eyes watering from the onions. "Good," he replied. "You're long overdue." "You sure about this? Being involved with me could get complicated." Ethan looked at her, serious. "Peace isn't about avoiding complications. It's about knowing what's worth the mess." She looked down. "And I'm worth it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached over, gently wiped a tear from the corner of her eye, and said, "You were always worth it. You just forgot." As the sauce simmered and laughter found its way into the corners of that small kitchen, Charlotte felt something loosen in her chest. Not because the threat was gone, but because for the first time, she didn't feel alone in facing it. The first knock came just after midnight. Ethan had just finished washing the last dish when it echoed through the hallway. Firm, deliberate, too measured to be anything casual. He dried his hands with the towel slung over his shoulder, glanced toward the door, then back toward Charlotte, who was still sitting at the kitchen table, barefoot and wrapped in the comfort of quiet. Her posture stiffened. "Expecting someone?" he asked. "No," she said, already rising, "but I think I know who it is." Ethan walked slowly toward the door, placing his body slightly in front of hers out of instinct. He opened it. Grayson stood in the frame, rain dotting his coat, hair slicked back too perfectly for a man caught in a storm. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that made Ethan's gut tighten. "Well," Grayson said, "so this is where the Queen has been hiding." Charlotte stepped forward. Her voice was calm, clipped, like a scalpel. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk," Grayson said, eyes flicking toward Ethan. "But I see you're busy." Ethan didn't flinch. "You're on private property." Grayson smiled again. "Relax, Batman. I'm not here to fight, just here to deliver a little reality check." Charlotte folded her arms. "Then deliver it and go." Grayson stepped in, ignoring Ethan's subtle move to block him. He walked slowly around the living room like a guest browsing a gallery. "You know, Charlotte," he said, voice smooth as expensive whiskey, "I've always admired your strategic mind, so I'm trying to understand what possible advantage you could gain from—" He gestured vaguely at the modest surroundings. "All this." He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket. "I sent these to your board members yesterday. You and your massage therapist, entering this place, leaving late at night. Your behavior has raised questions about your judgment, your focus." Charlotte didn't blink. "And?" Grayson's smile tightened. "And they're calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. Your position as CEO is in jeopardy." Ethan stepped forward. "I think you should leave now." Grayson ignored him, eyes fixed on Charlotte. "I can make this go away. Come back to the real world, Charlotte. This little experiment in normalcy is touching, but we both know where you belong." Charlotte glanced around at Harper's drawings on the walls, at the handmade furniture, at Ethan standing firm beside her. She looked back at Grayson, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. "You're right about one thing," she said quietly. "I do know where I belong, and it's not in a world where men like you use threats to control women like me." She took the envelope from his hands and opened it, examining the photos inside. "Send these to whoever you want. I'm not ashamed of finding something real." Grayson's facade cracked. "They'll destroy you. Everything you've built." Charlotte smiled, genuine in reaching her eyes. "They'll destroy who they thought I was. And maybe it's time for that woman to step aside." The next morning, Charlotte entered the boardroom in her usual impeccable suit, but something about her was different. The coldness was gone from her eyes, replaced by a clarity that made several board members shift uncomfortably. "I understand there are concerns about my personal life," she began, voice steady. "So let me address them directly. Yes, I've been spending time with Ethan Vanderbilt. No, he is not using me for money or influence. In fact, he turned down $1 million from me the night we met." A murmur rippled through the room. "I've spent a decade making this company exceptionally profitable while sacrificing my own well-being. I've missed funerals to close deals. I've worked through pneumonia to meet deadlines. I've been the ice queen you all wanted." He paused, looking each member in the eye. "But that ends today. I can lead this company without being broken by it. If that's not acceptable to you, I understand. But I won't apologize for finding something worth more than quarterly projections." To her surprise, Eleanor Richards, the oldest board member, spoke first. "Well, it's about damn time." The tension in the room dissolved as Eleanor continued. "I've watched you work yourself to the bone for years, Charlotte. We all have. And speaking for myself, I'd rather have a CEO who remembers how to be human than one who burns out spectacularly." One by one, other members voiced similar sentiments, even as Grayson seethed silently in the corner. By meeting's end, Charlotte remained CEO, but with a mandate to create better work-life balance policies for all employees. As she left the boardroom, Grayson attempted one final jab. "This won't last, Charlotte. People like us don't get fairy tales." She turned to him with genuine pity. "That's because people like you stop believing in them. I'm choosing a different path." Over the following months, Charlotte's life transformed in ways both public and private. She declined a prestigious industry award, sending Eleanor in her place while she attended Harper's school play. She established a foundation to support women leaving high-stress corporate positions to find more balanced lives. At Whitney Global, she implemented mandatory vacation time, family leave policies, and wellness programs that became models for the industry. Revenue didn't suffer. In fact, productivity increased as employee satisfaction soared. The business press called it the Whitney Revolution, but Charlotte simply called it common sense. One evening, as summer faded to autumn, Charlotte sat on the porch swing of Ethan's home, now their home, watching Harper draw pictures on the wooden steps. "I made this for you," Harper announced, proudly presenting a crayon masterpiece of 3 stick figures holding hands. "That's me, that's Dad, and that's you in the middle because you're what keeps us together." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the drawing, holding it like the treasure it was. Later, after Harper had gone to bed, Ethan joined her on the swing, his arm around her shoulders, as they watched fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. "I never thought I could have this," Charlotte whispered. "A family, peace, purpose beyond profit." Ethan's response was to reach into his pocket, producing not a velvet box but a simple wooden ring he had carved himself. "I'm not asking you to give up your world," he said softly. "I'm asking if you'll share mine." Their wedding was held in the backyard the following spring, with Harper as flower girl, and only their closest friends in attendance. Charlotte wore a simple white dress, no designer label, no spectacular train. Ethan waited beneath an arch he had built with his own hands, tears unashamedly tracking down his face as she walked toward him. In her vows, Charlotte spoke of finding herself by losing the woman she thought she had to be. In his, Ethan thanked her for teaching him that second chances come in unexpected forms. When reporters inevitably asked about her dramatic life change, Charlotte's answer was simple. "My proudest legacy isn't the company I built, but knowing when to step away from power to find fulfillment." Some people spend their whole lives chasing success, only to discover that connection was the prize all along. As the seasons changed and years passed, the story of the single dad and the billionaire woman became something of a modern fairy tale. Not because it ended with a wedding or because all challenges magically disappeared, but because it reminded people that beneath titles and bank accounts and carefully constructed personas, we are all searching for the same thing: to be seen, to be known, to be loved. Not for what we can provide, but for who we truly are. In their quiet home, filled with books and Harper's growing collection of art, Charlotte and Ethan created something money couldn't buy and power couldn't command. A life of authentic presence, where $1 million offer became insignificant compared to the wealth of genuine connection.